Hi, everyone. I am Paula Lem, Executive Editor at Poets and Quants, and today we are starting our second panel with Canada's Smith School of Business, and we'll be talking about how the Smith School prepares MBA graduates for their next move. We're talking to three Smith MBA alumni. And also, we've got a leader from the school's top-ranked Career Advancement Center, and we'll be unpacking how the Smith full-time MBA translates into real career outcomes. So that includes things like post-MBA roles, employer expectations, career pivots, recruiting in Canada. That's what I'm especially interested to hear about, and the ways that Smith's career coaching and alumni network continue to add value even years out after graduation. So we have four esteemed panelists today. They are Chris D'Souza Costa, Allison Rain, Sonika Sriwastav, and from the Career Advancement Office, we have with us Emma Sutherland. So thank you all for joining. To start off with, I'd like to ask you to uh, tell us, well, maybe we'll start with the alums on the panel. Introduce yourself, your graduation year, your current role, and also your employer. Shall we start with Sonika?
Sure, Paula, thank you. Hi, everyone. I am Sonika Srivastav. I'm from the class of 2023. I work as a senior manager for environmental risk management at CIBC, which is one of the top six banks in Canada.
Thanks very much. Allison?
Hi everyone, my name is Allison Rain. I'm also from the class of 2023. I work at Johnson & Johnson in their medical devices division as the commercial education manager supporting the surgery business.
And Chris?
Yeah, thanks, Paula. Hey, everyone. My name is Chris D'Souza Costa, and surprise, also from the class of 2023. And I am currently working as a managing account executive within the business solutions practice within financial lines at Definity Insurance Company of Canada, a publicly traded company on the Toronto Stock Exchange.
Great. And Emma, could we, instead of graduation year, maybe we'll have your title and also, if you would, a brief overview of the school and the program.
Sure. I did my degrees at Queen's also. I won't tell you what years. So my name is Emma Sutherland. I am the manager of career education and coaching for both our full-time MBA program and our MIB Masters in International Business. I've been with the school for about 15 years. And so I know all of the alum for the most part. I'm so happy to be here with everyone as well. In terms of the Career Center, Paula, you mentioned earlier, we are actually the number one ranked career center in Canada for the sixth year in a row. So we're super excited about that. And you might ask how, why, how does that sort of come to be? So we have essentially a team of 20 people. And we're sort of really divided into three pillars of support. So we have sort of the career education and coaching side of the business, which is the side that I'm on. We have a corporate relations team who really work with our employers to bring events to students, to bring obviously opportunities for employment. And then we have this wonderful behind the scenes operations team that helps us to support all of those things. When we think about the Career Center, amongst those sort of three pillars, we really do one-on-one individualized support for students, career education, which could be things like how do I pivot myself into another industry? How do I, prepare my resume, application documents, etc. We really do personalized strategies for students across a number of different recruitment cycles. And for MBA in particular, we have a careers course that is part of the curriculum that students go through in order to prepare them for what is beyond post MBA. So that, in a nutshell, is sort of what we do, along with the events and things that we take students to meet with employers.
Great. Thank you. So to start off with, I've got a few questions for our alumni, and then Emma will bring you back in for some careers perspective, if that sounds good. So for the alums, looking back, what prompted you to pursue an MBA? I know it was decades ago now, seemingly, but what were you hoping to change or accelerate in your career? Do you want to start us off this time, Chris?
Yeah, sure. And great question. I may have a bit of a different journey than maybe the majority of my colleagues on the panel and through the cohort. So I actually came from a different side of it. Smith School of Business and the Canadian Olympic Committee have a partnership together through a program called Game Plan, where recently retired or soon to be retired athletes on a Canadian national team can pursue their education through Smith. So I came through that stream. I was a national team athlete for Karate Canada for 11 years, competed in the Pan American Games in 2015 in Toronto. And after retiring from sport, I was kind of thinking, well, what's the next step? And then through a career advisor through the Canadian Olympic Committee, found out there was this opportunity between the COC and Smith. So I pursued that opportunity and actually started with Smith in another program called the Graduate Diploma in Business Program, which I completed in 2018. And it's effectively a 4-month intensive program that affords you MBA level credits that directly transfer over into the full-time MBA. So I graduated from that program, and then part of that is you go and get 2 years of corporate work experience at the minimum, and then you apply to the MBA in a future year. So I done that. So finished the GDB program, went to work in the specialized property and casualty insurance industry, and then came back and applied and finished my MBA for the class of 2023. So that was always the plan was, I had this entire career in life before, my corporate professional journey and needed really to accelerate, at a pace faster than so I could, effectively catch up to my peers who had gone through the traditional high school, undergraduate, perhaps a master's, but that did that maybe in their early to mid 20s. So that was really the catalyst for me to kind of get in. And I think it's a no-brainer. If you've done this intensive program and it's effectively 40% of the full-time MBA, why wouldn't you go back to complete that degree and to say that, you have an MBA from Smith School of Business?
Wow. That is quite the pivot. Allison, tell me about you.
Yeah, I think this is a common trend that you'll see among Smith MBA students is we all come from like very unique backgrounds. So I would also say I came from not what you'd expect an MBA student. So I was actually an ICU nurse at Kingston General Hospital, and I worked through COVID, and sort of towards the end of 2021, I went, this isn't really how I envisioned my life going. This isn't the career that I want to see myself in forever. So how do I get out? What do I get out to? I had no idea like what the career options were beyond just working in a hospital, maybe as a unit manager or educator. Um, but even that, like I wouldn't have been qualified for that with just a few years of nursing experience. So I thought I need to go back to school. I need to get some more education. And while I'm in school, I'll figure out what I want to do. And that's basically what happened. I was already living in Kingston. I thought, oh, it's a bit of a long shot to apply to the MBA, but why not? I have nothing to lose. So I went ahead and applied and I got in and it was a great year. So that's the background I was coming from.
Oof, yeah, sounds like it worked out well.
It did.
Sonica, how did you wind up at Queen's?
Yes, I did not come from a unique industry, unlike Chris and Allison. I came from tech, and coming from South Asia, I feel like a lot of us are from tech. And I thought that that way I was destined to be. But I did my undergrad, my first master's in that. I worked for that space for a few years in multiple functions. But around 2019, I started developing interest in the space of sustainability. I made a lot of lifestyle changes, but I felt like I was creating impact only on a personal or an individual level. I wanted to bring that impact more on a systemic level. And I thought that the best way to do that would be to pivot into a career in sustainability. But then I'm like, what program should I go into? A sustainability focused program felt very boxed in. It would give me a set of skills which would only help me dedicatedly go in that career. but I thought that an MBA could give me a vast array of skills, which probably would open my mind to things I didn't even know laid out for me. So that's what brought me to my MBA application, and specifically Smith because I think I really enjoyed the chance to actually talk to a person while doing the application who could walk me through this. So that's how I applied to Smith, and that's what brought me here.
And we've already talked a bit about the jobs that you're doing currently, but um, tell us how did that MBA experience really position you for the opportunity? Maybe we'll whip around in like 30 seconds a piece, maybe beginning with well, since you're talking Sonica.
Sure. I think that one thing that really stood out, like I was very sure I wanted to be in the space of sustainability, but I think a concept that really stood out in the MBA for me was something called personal brand. We were taught this concept in the MBA, and very organically, I honed in on that. Everyone in my cohort, including I'm guessing even Alice and Chris know this, everyone knew I was so sustainability focused, and I even made sure that I brought that personal brand concept to all my applications, to my interviews. Everything was painted with the color of sustainability and how I would bring that value to my employer in that space within that organization. I think that concept helped me really carry it forward to my applications, which kind of showed very well or showcased very well when I was trying to work through my applications and interviews. And that's what really helped me land my current role. That stood out to them a lot. They have talked about it once I joined the organization.
Absolutely. You said painted with the color of sustainability, and I just thought green. Must be green. Allison, what about you?
Yeah, I had no business skills. I had skills in effective communication and talking about human anatomy and like managing conflict, but I had no real like finance skills or accounting or strategy or I had applicable examples of how I manage my personal finance and how I manage time as a nurse, but I didn't have any like formal business education. So I think coming and doing my MBA was, just getting those business skills opened up a lot of different doors for me that would not have been an option with just a nursing education. So it meant I could explore things beyond just the public sector. I looked at the private sector. My first role post MBA was actually at a small health tech company where I got a lot more business skills that ultimately let me move into my current uh, company at J&J. But I think just those basic business skills were things I didn't have. Like I had never opened Excel before I got into the MBA. So
Yeah, I mean, but sounds like, effective communication, all that good stuff, very applicable.
for
So,
sure.
so
For
you
sure.
had definitely something going in there, quite a bit.
Yeah,
Yeah, Chris.
Yeah, I think for, how the MBA experience positioned for myself for the opportunities that came before me, kind of like there's really three pillars. One is the direct applicable knowledge of what you've learned in your courses directly into my current work function, whether that's sales, negotiation, strategy, like Allison mentioned, venture finance, consulting, advisory work. There's parts of every course I've taken in the MBA that I apply directly into my role every day, which, obviously, if you think of the value of what you're paying for tuition, it definitely carries over. So the quality of the course material and direct application to my current role. The second piece would be just the name and the weight of Smith School of Business and Queen's University within Canada and definitely within the downtown Toronto core, where financial district is kind of the heart and hub of Canadians' economy. As soon as you say, yeah, I've went to Queens or I got my MBA from Smith School of Business, kind of ears and eyes perk up. And then I'd say finally, and it's kind of related to that, the number of people I had talked to at the firm I had joined directly after my MBA, a lot of them, including the CEO and senior partners, all also had their MBA from the Smith School of Business. So when I was doing those exploratory chats, coffee chats and interviews, that definitely came up in conversation. And I think that allowed, both sides to kind of lower their guard and kind of catch up on, hey, how's it going at Smith? Hey, is so and so still teaching that course? And then you have something to connect to other than just kind of the interview or the role itself. and you can kind of humanize and get a better sense of someone's personality just by having that shared experience. And I think, Queens as a school in general, not just with the Smith School of Business, but Queens in general, it's really about, community and school spirit. And once you've experienced that and, you want to share the experiences you've had and, have those conversations, say, hey, yeah, I had a similar experience, or yeah, I went to, to that event. And I think those can kind of help build and develop relationships as well.
Icebreaker, definitely. Yeah, did you find that your career goals changed or evolved very much during the program, or was there any sort of pivotal moment that you thought changed or shaped your direction?
Yeah. So, I think the majority of MBA students who come into a program, I wanted to be in management consulting. Um, and Smith obviously has great relationships with, all the major firms and some of the smaller boutiques. So about the first half of the program, that was really my target industry. But like I said, I came from basically a bridging program. I didn't leave the specialized insurance space because I didn't enjoy it. I left it because I went back to school to finish my MBA. And then realizing that the industry I came from has a lot of benefits. The world does not operate, no business will operate without some form of protection or risk transfer. It's effectively as close to a recession-proof industry that you can be in. And the Canadian workforce, a lot of the workforce is soon to retire. So there are a lot of leadership opportunities that, are already present and more will be coming, in the next couple of years. So I decided to stay within my industry. But it was a bit of a challenge in the sense that, everyone's so focused on their industry, and here you are saying, oh, I thought I wanted this, and now I have to make that pivot. And, being comfortable with the decision you've made, and everyone is on their own journey. Um, but yeah, I did end up staying in my industry, and, I couldn't be happier.
Ah, good to hear that. Sonica and then Alison, did did you find this as well, that you actually wound up changing course, or rather, finding that your career goals evolved a bit during the course of the program?
It definitely did. And I kind of second Chris because when I came to the program, I knew I wanted to be in the space of sustainability. I just didn't know where. Everything was open to me at that point. And I thought that my only options were sustainability consulting because that's what my research had exposed me to. And I had kind of written off financial services, to be honest, because I thought that that's never where I saw myself. But the CAC told us very clearly, banks in Canada work differently. They can offer everything under the sun. And I'm like, no, I don't see myself there. Until in June, when my present employer, CIBC, was brought on campus through a virtual session by the CAC. And that's where I heard from an associate who was in that program at that time, who was doing a rotation in the enterprise sustainability team. And I'm like, well, that's an option. I never thought of that team being a part of the bank and that having some really good relationships to other areas in the bank that I could potentially work at. That opened a whole new world for me. I thought that this is a great in because through CSE support, I understood that rotation programs don't expect you to come with experience. They expect you to build experience on the job, which was the perfect opportunity for me. I wanted to do that in the space of sustainability. So that's when I gave my 150% to the application and I changed my direction from there.
Alison?
Yeah, I would also agree. My goals evolved. I came into the MBA saying healthcare, but not really having much more idea beyond that. I maybe wasn't as prepared as Sonica. I hadn't done a lot of research. I sort of thought hospitals or like public health, like Ontario Health, something like that. Um, but I was probably in my career coach's office every week or every other week, and her and I would go through all the options, and she really pushed me to think more broadly and set up connections for me with previous alumni. And it was in talking with the previous alumni that they said to me, look, you already have public experience. You can go back to public at any time. Like, why wouldn't you use this opportunity to try private and see if that's something you like? And that was like a very pivotal moment where I thought, like, that makes so much sense. Why wouldn't I do this? So that really helped point me in one direction. And then again, like Sonika said, in June, the CAC brought someone from Johnson and Johnson in, and it was just like a shining light on this person. I was like, that's what I want. That's where I want to work. And it took a while to get there, but ultimately I did. And yeah, so I would definitely say what I wanted evolved and probably will continue to evolve. And I still text my old CAC coach occasionally to say, hey, what do you think? Is this a good idea? And she always texts me back, which is really great.
Wow, sounds like two matches made in heaven there. Um, great. And so Emma, you've been patiently waiting. Thank you so much. So from your perspective, what is it that employers value most about Smith MBA graduates today?
Just to kind of echo sort of what everyone else has talked about, really, it's partly the courses within the MBA program that really help students, well, I guess to really kind of narrow down into those areas of focus and sort of a broad range of skills. I would say we have a team-based learning program, at least for the first 6 months of the program. And it is intentionally designed so you have all sorts of personalities and dynamics in there. And so that is often synonymous with the team that you will work with an employer. And so I'm sure the alum can agree that there are both challenges and exciting things about that. And so for sure, that team-based learning approach and the ability to work in a team is certainly appreciated, which is obviously connected to, the well-rounded academics. Unique backgrounds. You've heard from all the alum that they all have different backgrounds. No two people are the same. They might have a little bit of experience that's similar, but very much bring a different perspective into any organization that they go to. Um, we've talked a little bit about, Sonica talked about this idea around personal brand. That's certainly part of what we teach. And part of knowing yourself and being able to articulate that shows that you have good, strong communication and that you could theoretically be put in front of a client to have a conversation. So things like that are certainly important. We think of, the critical thinking skills, the problem solving skills, some of those technical finance or business skills. For example, we have preparatory programs rather that students involve themselves in both through our education and both sort of in extracurricular ways. And so they really build out that well-rounded profile and really get those skills that are those consulting or those finance or those insurance and they and skills and certainly within healthcare and sort of medical devices as well. But it's really facilitating that sort of broad set of skills that are really connected to critical thinking, problem solving, and certainly communication. So those are well appreciated by employers.
Definitely. I mean, I think on the next question, I feel like all three alumni have already done the heavy lift on this one, but Emma, can you still walk us through how the Career Advancement Center supports students from day one through to securing that next role? What are the ways? Maybe there are bits that we haven't yet touched on that you could elaborate on for us.
For sure. I think Allison said it best. We are relationship oriented at its root. And when I said I know the alum is, I haven't worked directly with all of our alum here, but I certainly have sat on panels with the three of them or engaged in some form of education or coaching. And so from day one, each MBA student is assigned a primary coach. That primary coach is aligned to what the student is looking for post MBA. So we have folks across a variety of industries and functions who support students in terms of where they want to be post MBA. So we align to the best of our ability a primary coach to those students, with the caveat that they can, of course, see any coach. And so they have access to a roster of coaches that they can see multiple times a week throughout their MBA journey and into when they're an alum too. We don't just let them go into the world. We still connect with them, as Allison rightly pointed out. We do offer, of course, career education workshops, of which personal brand is one of them. But it's not just that, it's that personal brand connects into a lot of other things with regards to your career. So certainly we support from that perspective. What we haven't really touched on is is our corporate team. So we've heard a little bit about a June event where there's employers, but our corporate team really works very hard to align to what students are looking for. Students tell us when they come into the program what they're looking for in terms of those industries and those specific employers. And so we tailor our events to what the students are looking for across those different industries and functions. In fact, we take the students to Toronto 4 times a year to meet employers, to meet alumni. And then, of course, we have that technical training that I talked about, mostly on the finance and consulting side, where we teach the students how to do those financial skills, like modeling, for example, or valuation. And the consulting is really about how to do cases, how to think about being a consultant, how to look at strategy. So certainly we're involved in all of that. Case competition, student conferences, anything that kind of has the lens of career on it is essentially what the Career Center supports. But ultimately, it is, as I said, at the root of it is building a relationship with the student to support them through everything from job search to, reviewing an offer, negotiating to landing in that role, and then keeping in touch with them beyond that.
Mm, thank you. And I mean, we've all been, or we've all, I should say, Chris, Sonica, and Allison, right, have been talking about career pivots. And one of the questions that I want to ask of you today is, if you're looking to pivot industry or function, how realistic is that within the MBA? It would seem, from what you've already said, it's very realistic. But, what support has made that possible for you? If there are any other things, I feel like we have covered this partly already, but if there are other bits that you'd like to mention, I don't know, Chris, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think it's, Emma, I think you put it, beautifully. It's a relationship business, and the coaching. I mean, coming from, a high performance athlete, it's all about coaching, constant feedback, reiterating and improving. We'd have coaches like a team coach just to coach you on team dynamics, whether you're in a supporting role or a leadership role. You have executive coaches. You have your career coaches. You have your relationship coaches that have relationships amongst the different industries. And yeah, I still keep in touch with our financial services, relationship manager. And every time, I'm close to the Toronto campus, I pop in, say hi, grab coffee. So that relationship continues on. I think, for myself, I stayed within my industry, but I did pivot on the other side of the business within that industry. And I actually worked with the financial services relationship manager at the CAC to help facilitate part of, meeting with the HR representative from the firm that I ended up signing with post MBA, going over the offer letter, like what are the parts we could negotiate. The CAC provides that support. And even, I'm no longer at that firm that I signed with post MBA, but even when I went to the firm that I'm currently at, send the email to the relationship manager at CAC, and she's more than happy to say, hey, more than happy to meet up and, and walk you through things. And, if there's anything that I, potentially had missed, she could help me out and, give me proper advice so I can, make the best decision moving forward. So it is, a lifelong, friendship and relationship. Your experience at Smith doesn't end, the day of convocation, which I think, is something really special. I think it really speaks to the brand and the network of Smith and Queens as a whole.
Yeah. Allison, Sonica,
Yeah,
any? Ah.
I'll jump in. I think one thing we haven't touched on yet is how small the class size is at the MBA. So our class was about 80 students, and it meant that like the CAC was really able to tailor like the companies that were coming in based on our interests. So I remember at one point in the year, I sent the relationship manager like a list of companies that I was really interested in, and she was able to get at least a good chunk of them to come in person or to recommend alumni that I could reach out to and speak with. And I think because of that really small class size, like they're able to really tailor the offerings to each student. And as Emma said, like I had a primary career coach, but I still met with at least 3 or 4 other career coaches if I had like a specific question. Like at one point, I think every student has this, but at some point in the MBA, I was like, oh my God, maybe I should do consulting. And I went and I met with the consulting career coach and was like, am I having a moment? Is this right? And she, we had a good chat. It wasn't for me, but being able to go see her sort of at a moment's notice because it's a small program, there's lots of support. So yeah, I think the small program is a major advantage.
I'd like to add a few bits as well. So first, from the program perspective, from the coursework, one very beautiful thing that stood out to me was that I was trying to build experience in a space I had no formal education or experience in. Everything was in tech, and sustainability was new to me. I was passionate, but passion would only take me so far. I advocated to our professors to include that in our coursework in any way they could. And I remember a couple of professors tweaked the cases. They didn't change it, but they tweaked it to add a few elements of it into it. Especially, I remember the supply chain professor doing that. They made the focus of one of our cases to reduce wastage, which I thought could be talked about in my interviews if I wanted to, if I wanted to talk about my focus on sustainability. I really appreciated that. My advocacy was well received by professors, and they were open to my opinions, and they received it well and made those changes in time for me to take away and learn from that. From the CAC perspective, I think it's always not CAC, but in the world, it's always told to us that don't change all three: industry, function, and geography. But I was very adamant and stubborn that I wanted to. So when as CAC mentioned, as Emma mentioned, we do get assigned primary coaches, but we get to talk to others as well. I initially talked to the consulting coaches, but as I realized I wanted to be in financial services, I turned to the financial services coach. Shout out to Alison Braga. She is amazing. We talked, and at no point did I feel judged to make such a massive career pivot. I was supported every step of the way, whether it was multiple rounds of resume and cover letter review. She made sure that it was tailored to the industry, but also to the specific organization I was applying to, and brought in my personal journey and element. She helped me. She didn't completely take me there, but she kind of gave me all the nuggets of information I needed to push myself in that direction. And I love the way I received support from her. So I think both the program professors as well as the CAC struck that balance, which helped me make that massive career pivot.
Mm. So, Emma, I've been wanting to ask about the recruiting side of things. Um, in this job market, especially for students who are new to the Canadian job market, what do they need to understand about timelines, expectations, strategies, and in general, how is the job market right now in Canada if you're right out of the MBA?
Yeah, so I think we got to start back with this idea of the pivot. Sonica said, we encourage you not to do three pivots. So let me take a step back when we talk about three pivots. So when students come into the program, they are either doing a geographical pivot, a functional, as in different role pivot, or an entirely new industry pivot. And so we say it's not impossible, but doing those three pivots can often be very challenging. And especially perhaps for an international student, geography is probably the biggest pivot. And so when we think about, understanding that Canadian market, understanding the geography certainly is very important because I have a lot of my international students who will say, networking? What is that? I don't know what that is. That feels really uncomfortable. You want me to talk to people to get a job? That's not how it works in my home country. So it's certainly understanding the elements of it that are more nuanced in a Canadian environment, even to the point of what do resumes look like? We don't use pictures here in Canada, but in other countries, they put pictures and their entire life story on a resume. And so obviously we don't do that here. So it's really thinking about what are the kinds of questions I need to ask with a career coach to really understand that. I talked earlier about the fact that we have career education. We do have a module for our international students, quite frankly, our domestic students too, to really understand the nuances of recruiting in a Canadian environment, what that looks like across all dimensions in terms of what to explore. And so that's really helpful both for the international students to really understand it, but for the domestic students to really help their international colleagues to really work through that. So that's what we sort of think about as a starting place. When we think about what they need to know, sometimes it's about the laws and it comes up in things like offers and negotiations, where that's certainly important about the different ways in which You have to read the fine print of some of that content that might be different. It's about also what we find is, for example, our international students would like to speak to someone else that has, pivoted from a different geography, might also be an international student. So it's really our perspective of helping the students to make those connections, as all the alum have certainly talked about. Um, what are their stories? What tips did they use? How did they network? How did they define networking? We also just knew this year, we have introduced an internship for credit, bit of a mouthful, internship for credit, where it's an opportunity for not only our domestic students, but our international students as well to really gain Canadian experience in a different industry that maybe they want to try out before they fully commit to it. Great gives our employers a great opportunity to get exposure to our students as well. That's a 4 month internship that they would do in the fall. So that gives them a really great perspective of what it's like to work in Canada. In terms of the job market, it's challenging, I think is the word I would use. Certainly, we've seen over the last couple of years, we've had lots of changes. COVID certainly has impacted that. We know that some industries are growing. Tech is a great example of that. Finance, there will always be opportunities in finance, just a change in terms of what the financial institutions are looking for. Consulting kind of goes up and down. They did a really good job during COVID of hiring extra people to support all the varying needs, the transitions, and they've kind of maintained their status quo. But as things are changing, we maybe see not the same amount of hiring because there's maybe less attrition, for example. So it's certainly a challenging market to navigate. It's also more competitive. So in areas where we have less opportunity, obviously the same number of people or more people are applying to it. So, we have a motto in the CAC, which is engage early and often, which essentially means meet with your career coach, get on that engagement early and do it often. And once or twice a week or once a month or whatever that cadence is for a student, really important for students to kind of go through those motions, engage early and often. We also like to say we're kind of like the GPS. Sonica said, my coach didn't do it for me, but kind of directed me. Having a coach as your sort of GPS to help you sort of steer that route, but not necessarily make the decision about that final destination really helps because there's going to be peaks and valleys in the recruiting in the Canadian market, whether we're for a domestic or an international student. So helping students to really navigate those peaks and valleys with all the support that we provide.
Well, lots of different things there. And I can, it's funny that thing about don't try and do three things at once. That sounds exactly like what my first editor once told me about. Well, it was similar. Don't do more than one big change at once. So geographic move, new job, that's just a lot to tackle. I think that rounds things out really nicely. But before we go, 10 seconds each, what is your one tip for students coming out into the job market today, applying for jobs out of the MBA? Chris.
Have an insatiable curiosity about the world, whether that's markets, the economy, but more importantly, about people. We're in a world of relationships. Build those relationships, build your network and your brand.
Sonica?
I would say be a part of every room you can be a part of. No matter what opportunity comes your way, take it. It could lead you to somewhere you want to be. And actually, sometimes it could guide you in directions you definitely don't want to go. And that's a revelation as well.
Absolutely. Allison.
I would say advocate for yourself and ask for help. So don't be afraid to say to people, I don't know if this is what I want. What do you love about this? What do you hate about this? And like be really open with them. And the more you can tell them about yourself and what you're thinking, the more they can help you get where you want to be. So don't be afraid to be really candid in your conversations.
Honesty goes a long way. Yeah. Emma, last but not least.
I will end it with saying follow your own journey or your own path. There will be lots of noise telling you should do industry A or industry B. You know yourself best, despite the noise that will be around you. Follow your own path and stay true to that because that will ultimately make you happiest in whatever career you choose.
Well, thank you all very much. That is a lovely note to end on, and a great personally speaking, and to my Friday. No, you've got a few hours left where you are, but it's been great talking to you all. Thank you so much, Chris, Sonica, Allison, Emma, and thank you all for listening at home. I hope you've enjoyed the panel and learned some useful things as well.